Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sideline Shenanigans podcast today with Jacob Maggard
Colin Richardson.
and also
Hoppy 23 on YouTube.
Hoppy23 on YouTube. He got the promo in there today. Go over and follow him on the YouTube. He does post routinely with some basketball content, some betting, some stuff like that. You guys will find it fun during MLB The Show. He does a lot of coverage there as well. But we will roll on into this mock draft here. We do have a pretty fun one. Obviously, the Titans still sit atop the board, so I got to have fun with drafting the number one overall player in the class, and, not being a quarterback. Obviously, we'll look to have some more people on at some point. I've got a couple people that say they want to be on, so we'll have it maybe a bigger one later on with a lot of different people. Some people you saw in last year's mock drafts when we did those. So, should be fun. But we'll go ahead and dive into this one to start things off. And with the Titans picking at number one, I think it's a pretty obvious trade down spot. I don't think the Titans are going to stay here and pick this player at this position because you have the Browns and you have the Jets and you have the Raiders, and there's quite a few teams that are going to be fighting for a quarterback that desperately want to come up and get Fernando Mendoza or Ty Simpson because this year's quarterback classes look pretty good with those two guys. But in this draft, we have no trades. And if the Titans are taking the best player, I've kind of changed my mind a little bit on that, but we're going to experiment with things. I'm going to go Arvell Reese from Ohio State. This is a guy that is arguably the best defensive player in college football, and his teammates sitting there. And Caleb Downs is probably one of the other guys in that conversation. And then as well as Ruben Bain, who I took last week at the number one pick. The Titans, they need help on that defense in big ways. They have a pretty good interior defensive line. Actually, it's probably one of the better units in the NFL. But the exterior, the pass rushers, are not very good at all. And so you get a guy like Arvell Reese, who's more than likely going to be able to shift down and play outside linebacker. But this guy can straight up play any one of those positions you want him to play. You want him to be a straight edge rusher? He can do it. He's done it at Ohio State. You want him to be an outside linebacker that drops back and plays coverage from there? He can do that too. You want him to be your Mike linebacker and play the middle of the field? He can do that as well. That's the things he's doing at Ohio State are incredible. He has been that good. So I feel like it's a pretty easy pick because of the versatility that he can bring to your defense playing multiple positions of need that the Titans have right now. Just makes way too much sense to go out and grab that good of a player. And again, if we trade down, I still think this is a guy that could be on the board if we move down to three. I don't think the Giants are a team that would take an Arvell Reese. And that would kind of be a dream scenario is a team at three, four, or five needs to come up and get their quarterback, and the Titans can go down and get this level of player and picks for the future. That's just kind of how you build the future of a rebuilding franchise. And again, it'll be all about who we go out and get as that coach as well to see what kind of guy he wants to fit his scheme. But Arvell Reese just kind of seems like he could fit any scheme. Moving on to the number two pick here with the New York Giants, a team that they have their quarterback more than likely. He's looked pretty good this year. They have a running back who, when healthy, has looked really well. And again, I think he's going to come back pretty healthy from that incident. It was only a dislocation, no torn ligaments. They have a really good defensive line, arguably one of the best in the entire country in all the NFL. They have a guy that's towards the top in sacks. They have a draft pick that was a top three guy last year, and then Kayvon Thibodeaux, who was a top three pick a few years ago. And so that defensive line is really built out. They have one of the best interior defensive linemen in Dexter Lawrence. So offensive line is listed as a need, but there just isn't any worth taking at the number two pick in this draft this year. So with them having to stay and pick at this position, I'm going to go with Jordan Tyson, who's arguably the best receiver in this draft. A kid that if he was healthy, it would make a lot of sense for him to go inside the top five, but he's had his health concerns. And a lot of teams are probably going to end up being scared of that. And so they may not take him at a top two, top three pick. But his talent is that good. And so if you're banking on the talent, you're banking on getting him in your strength and conditioning system to try to keep him healthy. I think the Giants would love to get a player that's that good, even if it is at the number two overall pick. They're probably a team to also watch for a trade down with the quarterback needy teams and them just not wanting to take a receiver at number two. Colin, you're going to have number three here with the Brownies. Which way are you going?
Yep. So the Browns, if they had any competent offense at all, they beat the Ravens this past week. They put in Shadur. He looked terrible. He
Yeah.
was looked probably worse than Dylan Gabriel. And it's not like they spent a real high pick on either of those guys. So I think they've kind of figured out this year that neither one of those guys are their guy. So I'm going to go with a quarterback here. And then it kind of gets tough here between Ty Simpson and Fernando Mendoza, but I do like Mendoza here. I think that drive that he led against Penn State was really impressive. That really kind of put him over Ty Simpson for me. And then this week, Ty Simpson didn't have his best game, and Fernando Mendoza continued to play well. So as of now, I'm gonna go with Mendoza over Ty Simpson here, but I think either one would be a great pick for the Browns here.
Yeah, and I fully agree. They desperately need to address the quarterback position. They clearly do not have a guy that can be the future of the franchise, and they actually have some really nice players. They have a Jerry Jeudy who has kind of stepped it back up a little bit as of recently at the wide receiver one, and they have Quinshon Judkins who's looked incredible as a workhorse back. Harold Fannin, David Njoku, great tight ends that can make plays, and even Dylan Gabriel, when leading this offense, has been able to get it to them and let them make plays. So they have a pretty good core of players on the offensive side of the ball, and you know how good that defense is. There really isn't much to talk about. They have the best player on the planet. So if you can go out and get a quarterback that can win you some football games, you have a chance to do that next year. Fernando Mendoza is a guy that is doing it at a high level in college right now. He's probably, I think, easily the Heisman frontrunner now with Ty Simpson's bad game and his, Heisman moment where he led a drive 87 yards to win it. So Fernando Mendoza makes a ton of sense to the Browns. Again, just a quarterback desperate team. I think that is a direction that they should go. Moving on to this next team here, the Saints. This is a team with a lot of question marks because there is a lot of ways that the Saints could go. They could take a quarterback, but they took a quarterback last year in the second round at the top of the second round. That is a decently valuable pick, and the kid has played pretty good. Tyler Shuck, he got thrown into the fire against the Rams. That's not a team you really want to play in your first NFL game. They have one of the best edge rushers in the country, if not the best. Across that entire defensive line, they get after the quarterback very well. He struggled a little bit there, but again, first NFL action. He comes in his second game and wins them a football game and plays incredibly well. Throws for over 200 yards, has a touchdown, finds Chris Olave, which, hey, that seems pretty simple. The guy's really good. So I think they found something there potentially with Tyler Shuck. And even when Spencer Rattler was playing, he wasn't playing horrible. He had a bad 2 games that got him benched. But I think they're going to stray away from quarterback potentially, especially if Shuck plays the way he played in those first 2 games. So I'm going to go with the best defensive player left on the board, in my opinion, and Ruben Bain Jr., a guy that is a dynamic edge rusher coming out of Miami. He is a game wrecker. He has 35 pressures on the quarterback in college. He's getting after the quarterback almost every snap. And they have a superstar edge rusher who's about to probably retire in Cam Jordan, who's going to finish his career there, I would assume. That guy can't be the cornerstone of your defense anymore. He just is too old. And if Ruben Bain can come in and learn from that level of player before he has to become the cornerstone on the defense, that would be really, really beneficial for him. We get back-to-back years where a Miami player is towards the top of the draft. It kind of seems that they've started finding those superstars once again, kind of funding that program at a high level. And Ruben Bain can come in here and be the best edge rusher on that Saints team immediately. So I love the pick for the Saints. Moving on to the Jets at number 5. This is a team that doesn't have a quarterback. They are going to be starting in the big year of 2025, Virginia Tech Hokie Tyrod Taylor. He is the starting quarterback for the New York Jets next week. Love Tyrod to death. I love him. He is one of my favorite players that I ever got to see in a Hokie uniform, and that was mainly from highlights. I was too young to really get to watch him when he was in his prime. That guy is 30 plus years old. He's way beyond his peak as an NFL player. If you're resorting to starting him on a bad rebuilding team, you clearly need a quarterback, and there's one left that is in that upper echelon, top tier guys. Colin, you talked about it. It's a toss-up between Mendoza and Simpson. They're going to go Ty Simpson here at number 5. I think they would feel really good about that if they were able to stay at 5 and get one of the top 2 quarterbacks in this class. I think you're probably going to get a bidding war for that number 1 pick. The Titans are very lucky to be in that situation when you don't need a quarterback and you have the number 1 overall pick. So I think the bidding war starts, and you get like a team like maybe the Jets want to move up over the Browns if they like Mendoza more. Or maybe there's a sleeper team down the board like a Rams who they need to prepare for their future. Matthew Stafford's not got much left in the tank. They might want to be able to go up and do that because they're not worried about their draft picks. They're going to be towards the end of the draft. So they can give those up and go get a top quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see what these teams do. I think the Raiders are very clearly a team that can move up and go after a quarterback, and they see Simpson get kind of taken right out from under them. I think it would be a really good pick for the Jets. They also have a pretty good core. Like I talked about with the Browns, the Jets have Garrett Wilson, who is a really good receiver. He is a level above, even a Jerry Jeudy with the Browns. They have Breece Hall, who has been incredible this year out of the backfield, and they have some nice pieces on their offensive line. So they would probably be a good fit for a young quarterback. I think Ty Simpson ends up there, and it can really change the future of that Jets team. Moving on to our next one here, going to be the Vegas Raiders. Hoppy, that is an in division team. Who you gonna be going with here?
Yeah, this is a team I thought they were going to be good at the beginning of the year. I really liked a lot of their pieces, and of course they got rid of their Myers, their number one receiver, and they're seeing that quarterback snatch from them. And I think a lot of people would expect them to go quarterback with this early of a pick, but I'm thinking, man, there's nothing wrong with running it back. I wanted to add a receiver. I wanted to surprise you with the Tyson pick, but I think this team needs to shore up both sides of the ball to really be a winning team. They're in a division with the Chiefs and the Broncos. Broncos defense is not going to get worse, and the Chiefs aren't going to be bad until Mahomes is out of there. So I think there's nothing wrong with punting it to next year's draft or punting it to later on in this draft for your quarterback and just taking Peter Woods here. You can't have too many defensive linemen. I learned that from the guy who runs this channel himself. And I think just adding a good defensive piece will help them further on down the line rather than taking a quarterback who may or may not pan out.
Yeah, exactly. You cannot have too many defensive linemen. That is a fact. They are a position that does not play every snap, no matter how good they are. And I think Aaron Donald even had times where he'd come off the field, and you know how good he was. So there is never too many defensive linemen, and a team like the Raiders, they need them. So it's not like it's drafting a backup. It is drafting a guy that can start for you day one. Peter Woods to start this year would have been in the conversation to go number one overall. That's how good this guy was. The Clemson Tigers have had a bad season, and Peter Woods hasn't been able to do what he was expected to do. I think he's still a top 10 pick guy. I think he can go anywhere from maybe even three down. I don't exactly know. The Saints definitely could use him. Washington could certainly use him. So there's a lot of locations that a guy like Peter Woods could end up at. But the Raiders do make a lot of sense. Again, a team that desperately needs to fix both the offense and the defense. You start with adding a blue chip prospect on the defensive line. Moving on to our next team here in the Washington Commanders, a team that is having a really down season. They just made the NFC Championship game, and then this year Jaden Daniels suffers quite a few injuries. Now he may miss the rest of the season, which luckily it is an injury to his non-throwing arm, but when you're as bad as they are this year, there's just no point in rushing him back. He's not going to get you into the playoffs at this point, and to run him out there and risk re-injury would just be ignorance. I think towards the end of the season, if he thinks he's fully healthy, you might play him, but otherwise, there's no point. So I think they're going to stay picking up towards the top of the draft, and this is a team that they could probably use an offensive line upgrade, but it's not a bad part of their team. They do have an issue when it comes to the edge rushers. They get no pressure. They have a bad defense. They have an aging defense on top of that. If you can go get a guy that has 12 and a half sacks and he's the sack leader in college football, you take him. And David Bailey coming out of Texas Tech. This guy is incredible. If you have not watched any Texas Tech football, I highly recommend you turn it on. They are not usually a team that's thought of as a powerhouse in college football. This season, they have superstars on both sides of the ball. David Bailey might be the headliner on that team. So pay attention to him coming out of this class. He is a guy that has some question marks with his size. He's only 6'3", 250 pounds, so he could be more of a speed rusher more than likely. But he has really long arms. And when you have really long arms, it's extremely easy to disengage with an offensive lineman. So he obviously has the abilities. He wouldn't have 12 and a half sacks if he didn't. So I love this pick for Washington. I think it definitely improves that edge rushing group. I think he immediately becomes a starter that will get after quarterbacks in the NFL the way he's doing in college right now. Moving on to our next one here, the Atlanta Falcons, they go out and trade their first overall, or their first pick, I should say, in this year's draft, in last year's draft, to go up and get an edge rusher. That decision seems to be biting them in the rear end because this pick is probably going to end up being a top five pick because they have no more Michael Penix. He has hit the IR. He's possibly done for the season. And Kirk Cousins, when he made his one start for them, he didn't look very good. He looked like he's kind of been on the bench for the last year or so. The Rams are getting an absolute steal with having this draft pick on a team that can win a Super Bowl. It's incredible that they're in this position. And when you have an old man back there at quarterback that you want to keep up for the rest of his career, you go out and you grab the best offensive lineman in the draft in Spencer Fanu. This guy has had a really, really shaky season at Utah. He hasn't been what they thought he was going to be. If he was what he was expected to be, this guy could easily go inside the top five to one of these, offensive lineman needy teams. But he hasn't had the greatest season ever. And I think there even could be a considered reach at 8. But it's not really much of a reach when you're going to be playing in the Super Bowl and you can go out and add a guy that can play for you. That's how good this team is. They could play in a Super Bowl and get a first round pick offensive tackle. If you can do both of those things, I think you do it. You get this guy in here, you try to hurry up, build that offensive line so you have at least a couple more chances with Stafford before he retires. Spencer Fanu is incredible, and even though he hasn't had the season he wanted, he's still the best offensive lineman in this draft, in my personal opinion. The Rams get a pretty good player there at number 8. Moving on to number 9 here, a team that desperately needs anything on the defensive side of the ball. Colin, where are you going?
Yeah, like you said, anything on the defensive side of the ball will help them. They are statistically the 32nd best defense in the NFL, so just anything would help at this point. And I'm going to go with Caleb Downs here. They don't really have like I said, the secondary. It gets burned deep quite a bit, and then also in the run game, they give up a ton of explosive plays. I think the most in the NFL on explosive runs. So I think a player like Caleb Downs, who had 107 tackles as a freshman at Alabama, so just starting at Alabama as a freshman is impressive enough, and then having 107 tackles is really impressive, and then 2 interceptions in each of his seasons, 2 at Alabama, and then 2 last year, and he has 2 so far this year, so he can defend the pass pretty well, and then just everything the Bengals need, really. I think this would be a really good pick for the Bengals here. He's arguably the best defensive player in the draft, but like you said, the safeties usually don't get drafted too high. So I think the Bengals would be really a great pick for them here at 9.
Yeah, this is a home run hitter. This is a top tier pick. If you are the Cincinnati Bengals and you need defense, this kid is incredible. He is, like you said, from day one in college football, was an impact starter. He was arguably the best safety as a freshman, as an 18, 19-year-old kid. He's now 20, 21 years old, and he's going to be playing in the NFL next year for a fact. I would argue this is the best safety prospect we've seen since Kyle Hamilton, and he might be better than Kyle Hamilton. And Kyle Hamilton went 14th overall. So you kind of get the range that he could possibly go in. If he's better than Kyle Hamilton, 9 makes plenty of sense. This is a team that in the Bengals, like you said, they need everything on the defensive side of the ball. I'm talking every single position on that team, except for their number one edge rusher and Hendrickson, isn't very good. I mean, they can probably pick anybody right here, and they would start on that defense. So when you get a guy that's that good, it's not just picking anybody. It's picking that good of a player. I love Caleb Downs. I love the fit for him because he will become a superstar potentially with the Cincinnati Bengals. It just makes way too much sense if he falls all the way down to 9. Moving on to number 10 here with the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of question marks with this team. There is the injuries to the quarterback, and Kyler Murray has faced a lot of them because that offensive line isn't very good. Jacoby Brissett has been getting lit up in the backfield, and although he's actually had some pretty good games, the pressure last week caused him to throw a couple interceptions. So they desperately need to protect their quarterbacks, no matter who that is playing back there. So give me Francis Mauigoa, the tackle out of Miami. That's going to be 2 Miami players going inside the top 10. Again, they are funding that college football program back at the level they used to. This kid is also not having the best season ever. If he was, he would also be in the conversation to be inside that top 5. These 2 tackles coming into this draft were supposed to be franchise changing. These, cornerstone type of offensive linemen. They're still really good, and they're still extremely valuable. There's an argument to be had that besides the quarterback, its offensive tackle and its edge rusher is the second and third most important positions in football. Whichever one you want to think is more important, offensive tackle or edge rusher, it makes sense to take those kinds of guys inside the top 10. Francis Mauigoa is clearly the second best in this class, in my opinion, and the Cardinals get a guy to protect Kyler Murray or whoever that quarterback is going into next season. Moving on to our next one here with the Miami Dolphins, a team that could potentially upgrade their offensive line to protect whoever that quarterback may be next year. Tua, I don't think is going to be the guy there because they have the option to get out of his contract without having to pay any more guaranteed money. But they may stick with him. He's had 1 or 2 games this year that you kind of saw the flashes of what he used to be. I still think he was kind of boosted up by his superstar receivers. That's what made him as good as he was at one point in time. But they're not really going to be a quarterback team, especially not at 11. So I'm going to look on the defensive side of the ball because this defense desperately needs some help. I loved your pick of Peter Woods, a guy that I would have considered heavily here. The next best guy that can play the edge, but maybe also the defensive line, is Keldrick Falk from Auburn. This kid is really, really good, but he's also a ginormous human being. He is 6'6", 290 pounds coming off the edge. That is a guy that can very easily shift down to the inside and play some defensive line if you want him to. That is, again, a massive human being on that defensive line. They can use him off the edge. They just traded Jalen Phillips, so they don't have a great edge rusher anyways. So again, either place you want to play him, interior or exterior of the defensive line, Keldrick Falk is an immediate game changer for the Miami Dolphins, and maybe they can get back in the conversation of competing in the AFC next season, as I just don't see that being possible this year. Moving on to number 12 here, Hoppy has some ties to the Dallas Cowboys, so we're going to let him take this pick here. Where are you going?
Yeah, I'm tied up here with my wife here and the Dallas Cowboys. So I got to do them right here with this pick. And you just watch this team play every now and again, and you'll see this offense it's running pretty smooth in the years that Dak Prescott doesn't get hurt. And I just got to take Cassius Howell here. This defense is just letting the offensive team down way too much. They got a running back now. They got two excellent receivers, a really good tight end, and a solid quarterback. So you really can't look at the offensive side of the ball with the first pick, I don't think. You just got to take the best important defensive position with this pick.
Yeah, and you get to keep the guy in state. That's another big thing. They're easily able to go out and scout him. He's playing in Texas right now. So that's one of those kids that they're probably sending scouts to every single game he plays in their home stadium. They've had a lot of ability to watch him, and they've probably seen how good he is. This guy is a freak. He is one of the better edge rushers in this class. His traits are going to jump off at you when he does his combine later in the year. And those kinds of guys, they always get that little bit of a boost to get picked even higher. Some people would say they're a little bit lower on a Cassius Howell. But again, NFL scouts, time and time again, when they see those combine scores and how well some of these guys perform down there, they take those guys higher than others expect. And this is the kind of guy that is going to have a good combine showing, more than likely. Also, he's just been really good. He's got more than 7 sacks in college football. He's playing for, I don't know, arguably the best team in all of college. Again, they're tied with Ohio State and Indiana when it comes to wins. They're an undefeated team, and their defense is the key to that winning. So I think that if you grab this guy, he comes in, he can immediately be a difference maker off the edge for you. You probably could have just kept Micah Parsons, and you wouldn't have had to draft an edge rusher, but they have to now. And so that's the best one available. You go out, you get Cassius Howell, who could be a difference maker immediately for this team. Moving on to number 13 here with the Minnesota Vikings, a team that has pieces to their future. They have a decent offensive line, especially when they get healthy. A guy like Christian Darrisaw comes back, former Hokie, one of the highest paid offensive tackles in football. He's really, really good. So get him back, let him get healthy. J.J. McCarthy, he's shown some flashes. He has some ability. Now, he has had some really rough games as well, but you're not giving up on him. Nowhere near this early. And then when it comes down to the receivers, you already know what they have out there. There is no need to mention Jay Jettas on the outside and Jordan Addison. That's two really good receivers. What else fixes that offense and what could add to that offense and just make it even better is a guy like Jeremiah Love, the best halfback in this draft and possibly the best halfback in college football. There's a couple guys that are in that competition with him, and Ahmad Hardy down at Missouri has a conversation, but Jeremiah Love is incredible. This guy is an Olympic-level athlete playing running back. He hurdles people constantly. He jukes everybody out. And then on top of that, he lowers his shoulder and runs somebody's over. So he has all these high-end abilities that he can have and bring to a team. Makes way too much sense that the Vikings can go out and get their running back of the future. And they have Aaron Jones, who's probably going to retire really soon. They have Jordan Mason. I think Jordan Mason could be a really good backup to him. But Jeremiah Love, man, if you could get him in this offense immediately, all it will do is help out your guy and McCarthy back there at quarterback. Moving on to number 14 here with the Baltimore Ravens. Again, an in-division pick for Colin. I know you hate this team, the Ratbirds, but where do you have them going?
Yeah, I hate them, but I'm gonna help them out here. So their leading receiver this year is Zay Flowers, and then number two is DeAndre Hopkins. If this was 8 years ago, that would be really scary. But this is not prime D Hop. So I think the Ravens need to go with a wide receiver here, and I like Mekhi Lemon here, a wide receiver out of USC. I think he's over 1,000 yards so far this year with quite a few touchdowns. So I think this would be a great pick for the Ravens, who desperately need help at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I mean, he can come in and immediately be potentially your number one guy. Zay Flowers is a solid receiver in the NFL, but Mekhi Lemon, you throw a ball his way, he catches it. He's Larry Fitzgerald. Now, I know that getting thrown around like that is kind of crazy because Larry Fitz is an unbelievable receiver, but that's what Mekhi Lemon does. He just catches the football. He doesn't impress you with his size. He doesn't impress you with his speed, but he impresses you with his ability to bring the football in. And there is no other trait that is more important for a receiver than to catch the football. Moving on to our next one here, number 15 with the Kansas City Chiefs. Hoppy, that is going to be you picking here.
Yeah, and this is a team that needs a lot of help after the Denver Broncos just exposed them this previous week. Good record, but they got some missing pieces. Nah, seriously, this team is great. If they finish the season getting this 15th pick, they could get it and they could improve the team even more. But we're going to replace the tight end that says he's retiring at the end of the season. I'm not sure if he will or not. A lot of divas like LeBron James and such people like that love to say that they're going to do stuff and then not follow up on it. But we'll go ahead and try to replace him with the best tight end in the draft in Kenyon Sadiq.
Yeah. Yeah, this kid is really good out of Oregon. He is a key cog in the machine that makes that Oregon offense turn. He was going to be really important after they had the receiver news come out before the season started that their superstar receiver is going to miss the entire season. And so they had to kind of scramble and find who's going to be the guy. Kenyon Sadiq is clearly that guy. He's also a very willing blocker in the passing game, also in the running game. He'll do both. If you need him to do that, he will. That's something Travis Kelce didn't do when he was in his prime. He was purely just a receiving tight end that he didn't really like touching people. Like you said, he was more of a diva tight end for sure. But obviously, he's a superstar. And if anybody can teach another tight end how to become an elite receiving threat, it is Travis Kelce. If he can get Kenyon Sadiq under his wing, he can tell him everything about the receiving game. And Kenyon Sadiq clearly already has the ability to block. So you might even create a super tight end here if Travis Kelce's good enough of a teacher to teach him how to be a superstar and set it down. That's another big thing with Mahomes is, unlike most quarterbacks, he's completely fine with you setting a route down wherever you want, and he will find you. That's not a thing most quarterbacks can do. It's such a fast-paced game. I mean, they want to get rid of the ball within 2.5 seconds. They think you're running a route. They want you to run that route. With Patrick Mahomes, it's I'll find a way to find you if you can set it down and get open. So that's one of those skills that a guy like Travis Kelce is always been able to have, and hopefully a guy like Sadiq for them can do it. For the rest of the league, you hope Sadiq isn't another superstar tight end. Rolling on to number 16 here with the Houston Texans, it is clear and obvious that they have a awful offensive line. CJ Stroud is injured once again. He had a rough season last year because that offensive line was not very good. What do they do in response? Go out and trade Laramie Tunsil, who graded out as the number one offensive tackle in pass blocking. Tell me how that makes sense. I don't know. Whoever's running the Texans clearly didn't think about that. So they go and get some draft capital. Well, you probably should have just kept your superstar left tackle. Now you have to go draft one. And there's only one guy left on the board that I think belongs inside that top 10, top 15. That's Caden Proctor, offensive tackle from Alabama. This is one of the most athletic offensive tackles you'll see at 6'7", 380 pounds. It is unbelievable what this guy can do with the ball in his hand. And I'm not kidding. Go pull up the Caden Proctor screen that they threw him in an important game, and he goes for 10 yards running people over and stuff. That's the stuff he has in his bag. They're not going to use that in the NFL very often. But again, you can see the athleticism he has at that size. That's really important. To go out and try to block these superstar edge rushers in football nowadays, you got to have the athletic edge or the athletic offensive tackles that are able to slide with them on the outside. Caden Proctor can certainly do that. Another guy that he could have boosted his draft stock a lot this season, but he hasn't had the greatest year ever. He started out really slow, and he kind of dropped him down boards. But as of the late part of the season and as of recently, he's really picked it back up and become a top-tier offensive lineman. I believe he goes here at 16 to the Texans. Moving on to number 17 here with the Carolina Panthers. This is a team that they're in a playoff position right now, and I don't think anybody thought they were going to turn around that fast from last season. They have no question marks at quarterback. They've taken receivers in the last few drafts. I think receiver could still be a need potentially because of the lack of success from everybody not named Teteroa McMillan. But they have a guy now. They have a superstar. They could go offensive line, but I'm going to go on the other side of the ball and grab a defensive player in cornerback Mansour Delane. Of course, he transfers over from Virginia Tech, as you can see hanging in the background, to LSU and becomes the best corner in all of football. Unfortunately, Tech has had a pretty rough history over the last 8 years of losing those superstar players. Hendon Hooker comes to mind, who almost goes out and wins a Heisman Trophy. These guys are clearly developing when they get to Tech, and then they're just not succeeding, at Tech and move on. And Mansour Delane is another case of that. He goes to LSU. He boosts his draft stock a ton, becomes a first round pick, and the Panthers are not a team that have great cornerbacks. Now, you're going to see that it's not listed as one of their primary needs. If you're telling me J.C. Horn is who you're relying on to be your number one cornerback for the future, I'm going to tell you that ain't going to work when you're going up and guarding some of these superstar receivers. You run into a team like the Rams and you play Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, J.C. Horn's going to get torn up. So they need to go out and grab a star corner. Mansour Delane can come in and fix that for them. He is the instant fix at that position and becomes the guy to start across from Horn and likely becomes their cornerback one. Moving on to number 18 here, that's going to be Hoppy again here, picking with the Detroit Lions. He always says you need to have your second favorite team in the NFL. For that, that is the Detroit Lions. Hoppy, what do you have?
Yeah, this team is going to get scary in the future if they can hold it together, man. They got two pieces of the Infinity Gauntlet. They got the running back and the receiver, and I really like their tight end as well as a top five tight end in my mind, getting in the end zone very easily out there. And this team needs to bulk up the defense, in my opinion. That's what their most important position is. And I really liked you talking about the importance of the cornerback because that's going to lead right into my next pick. And I'm going to take Jeremiah McCoy out of Tennessee University, really close to my hometown. So, not one of my favorite teams, more of a rival team.
Yeah.
But I think he's a good guy. He can go out there and kind of just slow down the chunk plays that the other team gets against this lines. They can beat a lot of teams just by getting ahead early, and they can give up those short run plays still. And it's really important for them to not give up chunk plays, in my opinion, for a lot of the games that they play in when their offense is clicking.
Yeah, and they could probably address the interior of their offensive line. They've had the recent retire of Frank Ragnow on the inside. They've also had some pieces move on. They had a guy in Kevin Zeitler who went off and signed with the Titans. So the interior of their offensive line, it could be addressed, but it's not the biggest need in the world. I do see the center there glaring at you, but center's just not a position you take in the first round. Flip it over to the other side of the ball, they could probably use a few different defensive positions. They could grab an interior defensive lineman, an edge rusher, but today we grab a corner, and Jeremiah McCoy was probably going to end up being a top 15 pick if he just played college football this year. He sat on the sideline the entire season due to the injury that he had. But last year, he put up some of the best tape any corner in the country put up. He just wasn't eligible to go to the draft. So this time around, I think he will. The injuries are always a concern for a player. You don't really want to risk it if you still get first round draft hype. Why wouldn't you go to the NFL draft? You get your guaranteed payday, you sign your contract, and then if you get hurt again, you're set for life. You make 4 years worth of money on a guaranteed deal. It would be stupid not to go to the NFL for a guy that could go in the first round. Jermon McCoy, I think, is a great pick for the Lions who can go out and bolster up that secondary, which again, like you said, it's desperately needed. Moving on to number 19 here, a team in the Buccaneers that we had in the first draft going with a linebacker. I'm going to have that happening yet again. They desperately need to address the linebacker position. Lavonte David more than likely finds himself in the Hall of Fame down the road. But he is old, and I'm talking he's back end of his career, whereas he could retire at any moment. They also could probably address the position right beside him anyways. Linebacker Sonny Styles at Ohio State is incredible. That Ohio State team has Sonny Styles and Orville Reese coming at you in the linebacker position. There probably hasn't been a better linebacking duo in college football in a long time. Sonny Styles can come in, immediately start for the Buccaneers, learn from Lavonte David, and then get that green dot on the back of his helmet the second Lavonte David ends up retiring and hanging up the cleats. This is a great pick for the Buccaneers, a team that wants to push and be a playoff competitor, especially with Baker Mayfield on the roster. Defensive improvements are desperately needed. Sonny Styles will immediately fill that hole at linebacker. Colin, I know you probably don't want to make this pick here for the Cleveland Browns, but who do you have sniping them a guy away from you with the Steelers?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Carnell Tate here. I think this would kind of be no-brainer for the Browns. Like
Yes.
we said, the defense, it is stacked. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL, but that offense is just completely inept. They just can't move the ball. They literally have Jerry Jeudy as a wide receiver, and that's just about
Yeah.
it. The rest of them are just not very good. And I mean, we've seen it time and time again with Ohio State wide receivers. They come into the league and then they're just automatically playmakers. They're some of the best receivers, most of the best receivers in the NFL come from Ohio State. So I think the Browns would be crazy to not go with Cardell Tate here.
Yeah, and like you said, it just makes way too much sense. The kid gets to stay in Ohio as well, so he doesn't even have to move that far. He gets to play college in Ohio, then he gets to go down the road and play in Cleveland. So big deal that they can get this guy to put beside their quarterback that they took earlier in the draft in Fernando Mendoza. If you get Mendoza and Carnell Tate, and you have this offensive line, which is solid, not amazing, but solid, with Quinshawn Judkins and the tight ends that you have right now, Mendoza is coming into a very comfortable situation with a guy like Stefanski potentially still being there. Who knows? He could end up getting canned at the end of the season, but he has some pretty dynamic offensive play calling. Carnell Tate, Mendoza, both great additions to that Cleveland offense, which, like you said, desperately needs a lot of help this offseason. Moving on to 21, this is your favorite team in the Steelers, and we're going to do something a little interesting here. Where are you going?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a quarterback here in Dante Moore. Like you said, we don't know for sure that he's gonna be in the draft, but as of now, he's on the board, so we're gonna pick him here. I think Pittsburgh, they need a quarterback. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, it might be his last year. It probably is his last year, and he just this past week slightly broke his wrist, whatever that means.
Yeah.
So don't know how long he'll be out, but behind him, I mean, you have Will Howard, but he hasn't played a snap in the NFL. He was a six-round pick. You're not really looking at him as your future, kind of just a backup guy. And you got Mason Rudolph, and you've seen enough of him. You know he's not the guy.
Yeah.
And then the defense, there's some pieces that you might think going corner here, but I think if Dante Moore falls to you at 21, I think that would be a no-brainer for the Steelers, who are in need of a franchise quarterback who've kind of been jumping around quarterbacks since being retired.
Yeah, that is exactly what they could, address in this draft. And if you're getting him at 21, I feel like that's a really good pick. I feel like the value is there to draft a quarterback at the back end of the first round. The Steelers are a perennial playoff team. They win 9 or more games every single season. It is a fact that they're going to do that. They would love to go out and add a receiver here. I think that would be a home run type of pick, especially if Aaron Rodgers returns. But you don't know that. And even if Aaron Rodgers is coming back, it's not more than one more season. He's 41 years old. He's going to retire really soon, and he's facing a ton of injuries at the back of his career. He tore his Achilles a few years ago. He now has broke his wrist, not in a severe way, but if anything, that's going to hinder the way he plays football. Those injuries start stacking up, and he clearly isn't as mobile as he once was. Me and you talked about that on the NFL podcast last week. So, quarterback is a position that they could go out and get. It almost seems like the guys that get to sit behind a quarterback, especially a veteran, they generally work out a lot better in the league because they have the time to learn from a guy, especially when you're picking them at the back end of the first round and not, the superstar that you come out and pick 101. I really like this pick a lot for the Steelers. I think if the Steelers called up Dante Moore and said, "We're looking at you at 21 and we would like you to be a Steeler," he would definitely think about it. I mean, it's hard to turn down being a first round pick in the NFL. No matter how good you think you are, you can always do worse than being a first round pick in the NFL draft. So the Steelers would be a really nice location to end up in. You know you're going to a winning football team, you're going to a winning football coach, and you're possibly going to a situation where you'd have a all-time winner coaching you in the quarterback room. So I feel like that's a really, really good pick for the Steelers. I'll stop hyping them up. I know that's getting you happy, Colin, but I think that Dante Moore would make a ton of sense to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
You'd go at least 9-8
At least 9-8 every year.
every year.
Moving on to our next team here in the Los Angeles Chargers. This is going to be another team inside that division of Hoppies. Where are you going here?
Oh, this is a Chargers team, man. They got a good quarterback, Justin Herbert. He plays like a winning quarterback, but he's not been a winner so far in his career, and that means his team's going to have to improve, especially playing in this tough division. And it's going to have to start on the defensive side with T.J. Parker slipping this far in the draft. having himself a little bit of a down year. But if he can come back and recapture some of what he did last year and bring that to this Chargers team, it could be a difference maker and help them at least start to compete. Because it's just sad seeing a guy with so much talent, even got some good receivers around him, but they just can't get into the playoffs for some reason or another.
Yeah, and if they have got there, they've had historical comebacks happen against them. So that is a moment to forget in Justin Herbert's career. But you are right. That edge rush position is a position they tried to address at the trade deadline where they went out and got Dafe Owe from the Ravens. He's had a pretty good run since he arrived in with the Chargers, had a few sacks, but I don't think he's the long-term edge rusher number one for this team. So a guy like TJ Parker, that is the swing high upside really, really low floor type of pick. He could play like he is this year, and he could be really bad, and you could just waste a first round pick. But then he also has the really good season that he just had not too long ago, which gives him that really high rating that you're going to see on this board probably every time we mock draft. I mean, they have him sitting inside the top 10 on PFF because he graded out so well 2 years ago. So TJ Parker, Clemson, again, not having the season they want to have, but they have a ton of superstars on the defensive side of the ball. This is just another one going at 22 to the Chargers to try to fix that edge rushing issue. Moving on to number 23 here with the San Francisco 49ers, a team that I think goes out and addresses the edge rush position. And you look at the edge rushers that are available. There are some really fun names on the board right here. We talked about a lot of these guys last week. LT Overton, or Mason Thomas, Joshua Josephs, all guys we had going in the first round of our mock last week. This time around, I'm going to go with R. Mason Thomas, the edge rusher out of Oklahoma, who just upset Alabama, but R. Mason Thomas wasn't on the field. He did not play in that game. So if you want to know how good Oklahoma is, a first round pick edge rusher wasn't on the field, and they upset the number 4 team in the country. This kid is still really, really good, and it doesn't say that, oh, they don't need him. They need him. If they want to win a national championship, if they want to make a run at that trophy, they need our Mason Thomas. This kid is really, really good coming off the edge. He's a very athletic edge rusher, but he also has the ability to be a strong edge rusher. So you get the combo package with him. They're going to probably need to address that position. I mean, Nick Bosa now facing his second severe injury. Who knows how much longer he's going to be a top-tier edge rusher in the NFL. But even if he is, he's had injuries. And R. Mason Thomas would be a guy that could be the number one edge rusher while Bosa recovers. And when he does recover, he can still be a great guy off the other edge. I love this pick for the Niners. And that team just continuously adds young players to develop in the Shanahan system. He's just a phenomenal head coach who can really get the best out of anybody. Moving on to number 24 here with the Dallas Cowboys. Hoppy's going to be back on the board here. Where are you going?
Yeah, we talked about it earlier. This team looks pretty good on offense, so I think they go defense here again. I think a guy like Romelio Height could be a good pick here, but we already took an edge rusher earlier in the draft, so we're going to shore up the pass attack on the defensive side here, and I'm going to take Avion Terrell. He's shown some really good play here, sticking with some good receivers, even though they've been losing it quite a bit this year. I think he could really help out a poor defense in Dallas.
Yeah, and I think last week that may have been where we had the Steelers going was Avion Terrell. So he's a guy that could go definitely in this 20 to 30 range of all the desperate corner needy teams. The Cowboys are one of those teams. I don't think a guy like Trayvon Diggs is probably going to be back on a Cowboys team next year. Even if he is, he's not had a lot of success since signing that contract. And they've had plenty of issues on defense. Me and Colin have recapped it that they have an awesome offense and they score a ton of points, but the other team usually scores more. And some of those games it's been giving up 40 points to teams. So they have to fix that problem. They go grab an edge rusher early in the draft. Now they grab a really good corner out of Clemson and Avion Terrell. He is not his brother. If you've watched his brother play, they are separate players. One of them is a better get up in your face, man on man, stop you. Avion is not necessarily that guy, but he's still a difference maker on the outside. He can still be a really good corner in the NFL, and the Cowboys get a good one here at 24. Moving on to number 25 here with the Bears. Colin, where are you going?
Yeah, I got the Bears going with LT Overton here from Alabama. He's had a pretty good year so far this year, and he played some last year. But the Bears, they've struggled. You saw the offense come around since the hiring of their new head coach, and then the defense has struggled some this year, though, and they've got plenty of defensive needs. But I think LT Overton here would be a really good pick for him. I think they're getting some good value for him here at 25 as well.
Yeah, he is really, really a good player. This is a guy that could have been one of those top edge rushers off the board this season if he'd have had the best year ever at Alabama, but he just hasn't done that. he's been really shaky. He's up and down. And I think we've mentioned it on the last mock draft that when he plays really well, it just kind of flows. The game is easy for him. He plays at that high level the entire game. But when he starts out slow, he goes slow the rest of the game. So he's a guy that you got to get going early in the game and then let him get used to the game action and then let him go and just play the way he plays. Really, really high upside. Not necessarily as low of a floor as TJ Parker because he hasn't sucked this year. He's not had a bad year. He's still been pretty good. But he still does have a lower floor than maybe a David Bailey or a Cassius Howell that we've taken earlier in this draft, or maybe even R. Mason Thomas, who was taken just a couple picks before him. So has really, really high upside and the potential to be a great edge rusher for the Bears. And again, if you're drafting a player from Alabama, you know they've been developed at least pretty well coming into the NFL. A lot of those guys do succeed. Moving on to number 26 here with the Buffalo Bills, a team that I think time and time again proves to you they desperately need to add a receiver. There is some really good receivers in this class. Once you miss out on that top group of guys, there's a lot of guys that are really close to each other. Denzel Boston can go here. Chris Brazzell on the outside would be a big-time threat. But they do have Keon Coleman. They have Khalil Shakir in the slot, so that kind of rules out a KC Concepcion. They need an outside receiver that has a speed plus a 50-50 ball combo. Give me Chris Bell out of Louisville. This is kind of a pick that's down the board a little bit, but it makes a lot of sense for the Buffalo Bills, a team that can really, again, improve that receiving core for Josh Allen. He basically just throws the ball a million times to his tight ends and Khalil Shakir, and when Khalil Shakir is not having the best day ever, it is literally just Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. And those two guys, they're not going to be able to stay on contract forever because you just can't pay two guys that are pretty good tight ends, tight end one salaries. They also have James Cook out of the backfield who can catch some passes and do some work here and there. He has his receiving backs that he likes as well. But you need a receiver. And if you want to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, which you haven't done in the playoffs, a guy like Chris Bell could help you do that. I think it's a really good pick here for the Buffalo Bills. Moving on to number 27 here in the Seattle Seahawks. You can see that the needs listed are interior offensive line, center and guard. You don't usually take a center or a guard, at the top 15 picks, or most of the time not even in the top 20. And they took Gray Zabel last year in the draft to try to fix that issue. They still have some interior offensive line problems. I think they're going to go out and address those in this draft. Colin, where do you think they're going to go here?
Yeah, I think they go with Vega Ione here. He's kind of the only really first round interior offensive lineman
Yeah.
that's left in the draft. So I think they would have to go there. Not really any centers on the board or any other guards. So I think that would be the only pick really that makes sense for the Seahawks here.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. You don't take a center this part of the draft. You just don't do it. It's not a thing that happens. You take centers second, third round because a lot of the time these guards they can shift down and play center, and they're generally better athletes because they've been pulling the entire time they've been in college, or they're trained to be better athletes. So NFL teams generally like to stick with guard to switch over to play center unless the kid is just a unbelievable center. The Seahawks, they address the need of an offensive lineman on the interior last year with Gray Zabel. They do so again with Vega Ione coming over from Penn State. Moving on to our next team here in the New York Jets. Of course, this is the pick that came over in the Sauce Gardner trade. I think overall this is a great move for the Jets. They are a team that desperately needs to rebuild, and they got their quarterback earlier in this draft, and Ty Simpson at pick 5, now picking again at pick 28. Go out and get him some help on the outside. Grab you a top-end receiver. There's a couple names on the board that could potentially go here. I think all the way down to Jeremy Bernard from Alabama. Every one of these names is a guy that could be considered by the New York Jets, but I'm going to go with the top-end talent in Denzel Boston coming over from Washington, the Huskies. Having a really good season, getting the ball thrown to him by Damon Williams, a quarterback that probably will end up in the NFL next season. But Denzel Boston is an outside threat that can be the guy beside Garrett Wilson. Of course, Garrett Wilson, he's more in the slot. He can line up in the slot, but he can also kind of space out and line up outside. He's a versatile receiver for sure. But you're going to get him across the field. Denzel is going to be on the outside. That's where he will play the sport, and it's going to be really helpful for, Ty Simpson to have a guy like Boston on the outside. Again, do not rule out the possibility of them grabbing Jeremy Bernard here because they played together in college. That is a connection that can definitely be, make sense for them. If they go in the room and talk to him and say, hey, I want that guy, you could go get him for me. But front offices don't pick off what their players want. They pick off the best player they think is there. Denzel Boston makes the most sense here. At 29 with the LA Rams, a team that already improved their offensive line to try to keep Matthew Stafford healthy so he can finish his career. I think they go out and grab a corner now on the other side of the ball. And Colton Hood coming over from Tennessee. You see two Tennessee corners taken in the first round. If they'd have both been on the field together this year, Tennessee might have found their way back in that college football playoff. This secondary would be incredible if they had Ricky Gibson, Colton Hood, and Jermiah McCoy healthy. Two of those three guys haven't played a single snap this year. Colton Hood is the only one that's been on the field, and he's been really, really good in his time on the field. Of course, he transfers in. Tennessee made a great decision pursuing him in the portal. I don't think they knew they were going to be without their star corners all season, but he's been able to replace them at a very, very high level. He now comes in and becomes probably the best corner on the Rams, if not the best. He's the second best, and he's going to immediately be a starter for them on, a Super Bowl contending team that wants to make that push. Really, really great that they have two first round picks and can add more first round talent to an already talented team. Moving on to number 30 here with the New England Patriots. Me and Colin have already mentioned it before. The dynasty feels like it might be starting. What are they doing to build on to that, Colin?
Yeah, we've mentioned how the Drake May's a great quarterback. He's definitely their future, and you would like to get him some help here on the offensive line, but I just don't think that this draft is very strong on offensive line, especially this late in the first round. You're not really going to find too much. And yes, they do have Stephon Diggs, but outside of that, I think we've talked about it on the podcast that Mac Hollins has been their leading receiver for like 2 weeks in a row, which is absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And that Drake May's even been able to put up these stats with basically just Stephon Diggs. They do have Kayshon Boutte, but he's not been playing up to what they were really expecting out of the draft. But I got him going with the wide receiver out of Tennessee here, Chris Brazil. He's been really good this year for Tennessee, back-to-back Tennessee players here. I think that just gives Drake May another weapon to throw to, and it could really help improve him even more, which is scary to think about because he's already in MVP conversation. So just giving him another weapon is that would be definitely scary for the Patriots.
Yeah, and Chris Brazzell again is a top tier edge guy. He's going to play way out on the outside. Now, Tennessee, if you've watched them play, they run like the stacks way outside. And so that's going to be a little bit different in the NFL. There's no team that really does that. But he still slots in as an outside receiver. And Stephon Diggs is a different mold of player. So they're not going to clash with each other. They're not going to run the same routes. So you get a guy that can come in, immediately be a starter for you, brings you elite size at the receiver position, but also comes with some really high level speed. Put him on the outside, let him be a big time playmaker. He's had some really great games with Tennessee this season. You saw some highlight reel catches earlier in the year, so expect him to be able to do that with the Patriots moving forward. Moving on to our next team here in the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, the Eagles are the defending Super Bowl champions, and they're still sitting at the bottom of this draft because they're expected to be top the NFC once again. I think this team is really, really good, and they don't have very many holes. Receiver being listed as a need is just speculation that A.J. Brown doesn't end up back in Philadelphia next season because there is some rumors there that he could get traded due to the fact that they don't use their receivers at a high level, and he isn't too happy with the team. But I will say in recent weeks, he's kind of taken that role of just doing what he's been told to do or doing what he's been needed to do and less complaining. And they started winning football games again, and they haven't really had any issues with it. So I think they'll hold on to those receivers. I don't think that's a desperate need for this team. I do think that they could go out and address the edge rush position, and that's what I'm going to do here with Mateo Uiagalelei, of course, the brother of DJU, who clearly was not much of an NFL player, was not much of a college football player, to be honest with you. Don't get the name and think the player isn't all that good. Mateo is phenomenal. He's at Oregon for a reason. He's a part of a team that is competing to try to go win a national championship. This kid is really, really good, and he is the most athletic edge rusher we've probably drafted. You know, an Arvell Reese that we drafted at the very top of the board, and a Ruben Bain. Those kids might be more athletic, but they were top end picks. This guy's all the way down here at 31, and he's got the super athleticism to come off the edge, to be a guy that can even drop back in coverage and play some pass coverage. But he is not going to overpower anybody, and he's not going to be much of a factor in the run game. That's just not what he is as an edge rusher. So it's good if you can get him on this team that has incredible defensive linemen that stop the run on their own. They don't need an edge rusher that can go out and do that at a super high level. So Mateo Uiagalelei makes a lot of sense to the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think, again, they're just getting better, and they don't need really anything to get better. So just an addition to this Eagles roster. Moving on to pick number 32 here. I'll let you finish it, Hoppy. This is your favorite team. Where are you going?
Yeah, right here. The Denver Broncos are they're incredible this season, beating some really powerhouse teams out there in the Eagles and the Chiefs last week, of course. And this team is pretty solid defensively. Now, you can always add some more pieces because there's going to be some chip injuries, but we really need to focus on offense. Bo Nix has shown that he can play that kind of game manager Russell Wilson mode and lead a game-winning drive in a low-scoring game and score towards the end. And we can just add a receiver to help him do that. And I'm going to pick KC Concepcion. He's a short yard receiver, a nice slot guy for us when we really don't have a slot guy on our team. We got Sutton, who's got hands of gold, but he's more of a deep threat, not the fastest or quickest guy. And that's why I'm going with KC.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think this is a guy that can make a difference for this offense. He can be the slot receiver that they just don't have right now. And that would just really improve that receiver room overall. Bo Nix has built a great connection with Sutton. Of course, he's been there. Sutton's been in the league for a long time. He's a great 50-50 guy, one of the best in the league. So you don't really need that position addressed. And on the other side, he's found his guy that he played with in college in Troy Franklin. They also have Marvin Mims, who's a big piece of this offense and can be used out there. So that position is really filled with players. They don't need to fix that. They need to grab a slot receiver, and KC Concepcion is nearly perfect for this team when it comes to fit. If there really is a fit on the board, that's a player I love to this team. We drafted him higher than this last time, wherever the Broncos were sitting around 26, I believe. We had him taking him there. So I think it just makes a lot of sense. He's a great fit for the team that needs him with the Broncos. As you can see, picks 1 through 32 are listed here in front of you. We'll do this every time. We'll go over the draft. We'll give who we think maybe is the best fit or the best player in the position that he is going to. First of all, we'll start with you, Colin. Who on this board do you think is just the best pick with the value that they got them at?
I really like Caleb Downs going to the Bengals here. Like we said, he's the Bengals defense is not good at all. They need just about anything on defense. They have Trey Hendrickson, and that's just about it.
Yeah.
And he's been hurt. So right now that defense is really struggling. And I think a guy like Caleb Downs will be huge. He can stop those explosive runs that they're giving up, and then he can also play the pass pretty well too. So I think this would be huge for the Bengals.
Yeah, and I think the stat you mentioned earlier was over 100 tackles in his freshman season at Alabama. So he clearly can have the ability to come downhill and make plays. And he was doing that in a defense that had guys everywhere that were really good. So if he's getting 100 tackles there, you know he's a heat-seeking missile when he comes downhill. So let him come in, be an absolute difference maker for this Bengals team. He is the best safety prospect, like I said, that I've seen. I think he might even be better than Kyle Hamilton, who was taken a few years ago early in the draft. So I agree with you. That fit does seem like a really good one to the Bengals. Hoppy, who do you think is the best overall fit where they got them at?
Yeah, I really liked Collins' pick of Carnell Tate to the Browns. Like he said, the wide receivers coming out of that school always seem to find a way, and the Browns, quarterback or not, they just seem to have a bad franchise down there, and you really got to be hopeful that someone can get picked there and actually pan out to be what we expected them to be. And I think going to Ohio State for a receiver is a good way to kind of pound in that sure bet guy that can jumpstart your franchise again.
Yeah, I fully agree with you there too. I think those are both great picks. I think Carnell Tate is a guy that every single team in this draft that isn't the Cowboys, maybe, I don't even know if anybody else can say they have two number one receivers.
The
They could
Bengals.
all use a Carnell Tate. Yeah, like you said, the Bengals do. The Bengals can maybe take, the next four drafts straight, take a receiver just because they want to draft a receiver every year. But Carnell Tate could be a wide receiver one. That's how good this kid is. The Broncos, I think the Bills took a receiver. We had receivers, of course, early in the draft with the Giants. This kid could go any one of those teams that took a receiver, and I think they'd all be really happy about getting him. So Carnell Tate, incredible player, makes a ton of sense at the 20th overall pick. It really feels like a steal. And you see a lot of those Ohio State logos on this board, as you can tell, that may be why they're the number one team in college right now. Just going over it, for me, I think the best, value for where you got the player is Caden Proctor to the Houston Texans. This is a kid that was talked about to potentially be the number one tackle in this draft. He had a rough start to the season, and it kind of tanked his draft stock a little bit. He's played really well as of late. He's also maybe the most athletic offensive lineman in this draft, and he's 6'7", 380 pounds. That is unbelievable. If you're the most athletic lineman at that size, you can be a surefire monster at the left tackle position in the NFL. I think the Houston Texans desperately need to protect CJ Stroud. He's facing injuries yet again in his third season in the NFL. I think there's other guys on this board that make a lot of sense. And Hoppy, I'm going to ask you here because you've kind of, in the last one, you found your favorite guy. Have you done that yet? Have you found a player that you think is your favorite guy on the board?
Well, I haven't picked one yet that I like as much as the guy I liked last year. They're that O lineman from
Yeah.
Ohio State. But I guess so far, just picking him to my team back to back weeks, I'd have to go Casey Concepcion. He seemed like a good fit, exactly what we need out of a receiver. And I think he's going to go in the first round, regardless, because we're going to take him wherever we fall towards the later half of this draft.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly how we explained it when we made that pick, as he just is a perfect fit for the roster that is put together. Colin, I'll give you one last little bit of a second to rant a little bit on the Dante Moore pick to the Steelers.
Yeah, I think it would be like I said, at 21, I think it would kind of be a no-brainer for the Steelers. Like we said, Aaron Rodgers is old. He's not getting any better at this point. He's been dealing with some injuries. Mobility is not there anymore. I think bringing in a guy like Dante Moore, even if Rodgers does stay another year, he can set behind him or whoever else. Maybe you want to start Mason Rudolph. I wouldn't be a huge fan of that over Dante Moore, but
Yeah.
if that's the way you wanted to go, that would be fine. You'd probably still find a way to win 9 games, like we said.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I think it would be a great pick. Yeah, I think he's a really good quarterback. He's definitely got a ton of talent, and I think 21 that would be great value for him because I think he has the potential to go up in the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, there's a world where he goes number six to the Raiders. They're a very QB needy team, and with those two guys off the board before them, they could very easily go Dante Moore if he ends up in this draft. Another quick question for you, last but not least: if Dante Moore doesn't enter this draft, is there any quarterback you would entertain at 21, or would you want to go the other direction and get something else?
I think if the only way that I think Pittsburgh goes quarterback, if it's not like I said, not Dante Moore, would have to be Ty Simpson or Fernando Mendoza. If it's not one of those two guys, and obviously those two are not going to fall to 21, so I think they would have to make a move for those guys specifically. But yeah, I think those are the only two guys, and then I think maybe in the second or third round they go quarterback
Yeah,
because there's plenty of pretty good quarterbacks in this draft. I
yeah.
just don't. I think those two are the only two that are at the top of their list,
Yeah,
really.
fully agree with you there as well. I think Mendoza and Simpson are the clear top guys, and Dante Moore's that next tier where he could go anywhere from 6 to 32, just depending on who's picking at what position. So I agree with you. I think that they would go the other direction, probably grab defense, maybe a guy like an Avion Terrell, who we picked last week at 21 or wherever they were picking at. I can't remember, but somewhere in that range. Last but not least, I am a Titans fan, so I'll give you a quick rundown of why I went Arvell Reese this time and not Ruben Bain. I just think Arvell Reese is the best player in this class now. I think that there's even a world where I'm saying he's the best player over Caleb Downs, even though Caleb Downs plays a position of less value, and we're always saying that he's the best player here because of that. Arvell Reese might be the best player on his team, and they play together. So if Arvell Reese is the best player on his team, he's got to be the best player in this draft. I love this guy. I think he's really, really good. I think he can be a dynamic difference maker for the Titans. Like I said at the very beginning of this draft, they have to add on the defense or in that receiver room, and there just isn't a reason to take a receiver at number one. Not in this class. Next year, you want to take a wide receiver at number one? Jeremiah Smith is calling. He said, "Yeah, I'll wait around and be number one next year." But in this year's draft, I just don't think there's that guy available. So Arvell Reese makes the most sense to the Titans. We'll wrap it up here. You're looking at our entire draft board there. We'll be back with another way too early mock at some point. Again, this video did really well on the channel last time, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. We've had a lot of fun filming these. We will probably have more people on in the future. Hoppy, this is your time. If you got anything else you want to add, do so now.
I'll just go ahead and say, man, loving the Broncos this year. It's a year for Denver. We're hopping out to a hot start to the year. And if you look at the last time we won the Super Bowl, 9-2 start, great defense, not so great offense. I think our offense this time is actually a little bit better than it was the time that we beat the Panthers. That don't mean we'll win again. It's a whole different league, whole different ball game. But I'd be very afraid if I was a Bills or a Kansas City Chief team running into us in the playoffs before they even have to face each other. That's going to be a tough battle. And of course, as always, Broncos country. Let's ride.
Yes, yes, Broncos country. Let's ride, the iconic line from the Russell Wilson. I do think that the Broncos, like you said, have had an incredible defense this year, and they're doing it without Pat Surtain right now. They just beat the perennial contender in that division without their best player. So if you can do that, you can clearly beat them when he gets healthy. I think it'll be a really fun rematch if you get that somewhere down the line. And the Broncos are in line to steal this division away from the Chiefs, which hasn't happened in a long time. Colin, if you got anything else you want to add, your time is now.
Yeah, I just want to say, very impressed by the Steelers' ability to adjust to Jamar Chase. He, like last time, had the 15 catches and many, many yards. Not
Yeah.
sure how many it was. It was a lot of them, though. This time around, 3 catches for 30 yards. So definitely much better on the defense there. Good job, adjusting to him. And then they got in his head a little bit, so now he's suspended for a game.
Yes, they took him out for a future game, which gives them a great chance to build another game in between them and the Bengals. I think that division's down to two teams now. I don't think the Bengals are really going to be in that race with the Steelers beating them and with them being where they're at on the year. I just don't think there's a lot of hope left. It's Steelers Ravens, and that's going to be really fun when we get those games somewhere down the line. We'll obviously talk about that on our NFL weekly recaps when we cover those. We'll look out for those on Wednesdays. Pay a lot of attention to the channel. I just posted mine and Hoppy's NBA awards predictions. I had obviously released our conference predictions earlier in the season, but got the awards out so you guys can go check those out. Clearly stated those were preseason. There's a couple guys on there that are clearly playing elite better and some of them playing worse, but should be fun to go ahead and check that out. Come back for college football content. That's how this channel started, so look out for that. At least a weekly pick 'em every Thursday. Colin, I think we just had you on. I hope you enjoyed your process of
Yeah.
being on the show. We might have to get you on another time. That'll do it for us this week. We'll be back with some mock draft in the near future. I won't give a date because I don't know, and we'll try to build a bigger squad when we do that. So should be a lot of fun. We'll see you guys. Like I said, like, subscribe, comment helps the channel out a ton, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.